Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search builds great teams by connecting lawyers in Texas with career opportunities at small and boutique law firms. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel Hare back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you and your family are both healthy and safe. Before we get started, I want to let you know about a few of the positions we are currently searching for. In Austin, we're looking for a family lawyer at a really, really good firm there, as well as an estate planning attorney. In Houston, also an estate planning attorney, as well as an insurance defense position at a higher-end litigation boutique. So that's a really good opportunity as well. In Dallas, looking for several things, civil litigation, corporate, that's more M&A type work, and then also a real estate and private securities work, so doing private offering type work around real estate. So we've got those going, and then also Tarrant County and Fort Worth. We've got corporate opportunity, which would be real estate type work there as well, a family law position, and then also a partner level position if you've got about $250,000 in billables, and it could be in just about any civil practice area. So those are a handful of the opportunities that we're currently searching for. If those might resonate with you or someone you know, would love to visit with you about that. We also have some others that I didn't mention today that we're aware of and are searching for. So feel free to reach out if you just want to talk about what opportunities might be out there for you. All right, today we are in Houston, where our guest is Michael Clinton. Michael is a personal injury and plaintiff's attorney with Perdue Kidd. In 2018, he was one of just 13 young lawyers named to Texas Super Lawyers list of rising stars in the class action and mass torts category, an honor he has continued to receive in the years since. Michael is also deeply invested in volunteer work and in the community, having served on the boards of both the Houston Young Lawyers Association and Houston Young Lawyers Foundation, while also tutoring elementary age students at the Forge for Families, an after-school program in Houston's 3rd Ward. We're going to get into some of that in this conversation, I'm sure. All right, with that, let's hop into our conversation with Michael Clinton on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Michael Clinton joins us right now. Michael, thanks so much for taking time to come on the show.
Daniel, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this and appreciate you reaching out.
Absolutely, man. It's good to see you and catch up a little bit. Let's start by having you share about your firm and your practice and catch us up a little on what's going on with you.
Absolutely. I work at Perdue Kidd in Houston, Texas. We handle a broad spectrum of personal injury cases. If you broke it up into 3 categories, it'd probably be standard one-off personal injury cases, everything from 18-wheeler crashes, car crashes, slip and falls, and also have some other unique opportunities like dog attacks. Had a cool, interesting case with a crash at a triathlon a few years ago. And then we also handle medical malpractice and medical product litigation, so medical device, pharmaceuticals, mass tort type work.
Sure, absolutely. And before we go any further, I should stop and ask, people can't, that aren't watching this video or listening on the podcast, can't see this, but describe the room that you're in right now. What goes on there? I saw him. It looks like he's in an actual courtroom or a practice courtroom for the Baylor Law folks, or a mock type courtroom. So yeah, where are you right now?
I am at our office. We have a mock courtroom. We are a trial firm. And yes, I told Daniel before we got started that when I first started working here, walking down to this end of the office used to give me panic attacks, putting me back in practice court. But it's a great space for us, even depositions, right, for the client to be here testifying in what appears to be a courtroom just gives a little more real effect to the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. Well, a little bit, I might ask you to move to the witness stand so I can really kind of feel like I can get after you on cross a little bit. But so the other thing I wanted to ask you about with regards to your practice is, and as I've talked with law students back when I was at the law school and now lawyers today that are either interested in going into plaintiff's work or making the switch to it, maybe if they're in practice doing something else. What thoughts do you have on, and particularly that latter group, people that are maybe out a couple years, but doing a different type of litigation and thinking about making the shift over? What are some things that maybe transfer over well from other areas that you've seen? What maybe don't as much? What advice would you have for folks that are maybe thinking through that? I think sometimes there's a grass is greener, especially for people going from like the billable hour to not. That's probably the big one. And I'm sure there's some of that's legitimate and true, and other parts of it that you kind of the trade-offs and stuff like that. So I'd just be curious your thoughts, as I'm getting a lot of questions these days about people wanting to move over to the plaintiff side.
Sure. That's an interesting question. I think from a lawyer standpoint, the skills that cross over that you'd need, and I suspect you'd need in any industry, is your ability to take massive amounts of information and be able to synthesize it, break it down in a simple way, and be able to reteach it in a simple way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a huge thing in our practice, that our client is probably going through this for the very first time. A lot of first-time buyers is kind of what I joke about with clients.
Not a lot of repeat clients, hopefully. Yeah.
Some repeats, you'd be surprised. We do a lot of teaching. Whereas I imagine in other fields, especially in other types of litigation, your client might deal with this on a regular basis, or at least has done it before. Or you are dealing with someone, maybe an insurance adjuster who works kind of adjacent to the industry and has a working knowledge of it. Our clients come to us during what's usually been one of the worst parts of their life. People don't call us on good days.
Sure.
So you have someone coming to you that is truly leaning on you and looking to you for guidance and help, and teaching them on the most basic level. Here's what the next 30, 60, 90 days are going to look like. Here's what the next year to 2 years looks like. And so I think that's probably a really unique thing to what we do, that you are dealing with someone who is coming to you, who's in desperate need of help, and has no idea what's in front of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we talk about that a lot too when we're talking with family lawyers on the show. It's some similarities and crossover there of you're dealing with individual people in a very personal and emotional, injured, maybe more emotionally than physically, but situation, and as opposed to a business or in a corporate environment or different things like that. And absolutely, those are differences for sure. What's going on right now? In kind of the trial law bar, the plaintiff's bar, or just kind of trial law in general, in terms of changes to the laws or changes to procedures or anything like that. We're obviously in the middle of a legislative session, so we maybe have some things that are about to come down the pipe or not. But what's the latest there?
You did mention it. We are in the middle of a session, and our partner, Jim Perdue Jr., is president of the Texas Trial Lawyers Association, which is a plaintiffs' attorneys organization. And he's leading the fight in protecting our clients' rights and abilities to recover against wrongdoers. There's numerous pieces of legislation, Daniel, that have been fought out already, and that there's still fights to be had. But what's always good to know, what's good to see, is that there are the fight for our clients is so much more than just in their individual case. And it has been eye-opening to me in the first 10 years of practice to see what goes on and see, I guess how the sausage is made, right? That A lot of what we deal with, a lot of the limitations in our industry and in our cases start in Austin. It's important for both sides to be represented. I represent only injured individuals, but I certainly understand that each side has their rights and their fears and why they need protection. But it is important that both sides are fairly represented, and so that everyone's being taken care of and looked out for. Certainly have a special interest in protecting our clients and making sure that they're not unfairly prejudiced against recovering as they should.
Sure, absolutely. And what about how COVID has impacted things within your practice? I'm curious about what, if any, kind of differences have you seen in terms of the types of cases that have come through the door over the past year? Obviously, kind of how they've been handled and processed through the system and through the court system as well. And just for context and people listening later, this is May 13th that we're talking today, so things may change by the time you're hearing this. But what kind of you see moving forward as things hopefully start to open up and vaccinations continue to make their way through and all of that?
I think probably like with every law firm and legal job and just any job in any industry, the dependence on Zoom has been crucial. Being able to meet with someone, be able to continue taking depositions. We might, talk about this in a later point, Daniel, but we fancy ourselves to be a technologically savvy law firm. I actually had a defense attorney on the opposite side of a case make a comment about that. I was like, he goes, yeah, I know you guys really big into technology, and kind of like struck me like, well, I think that, but to hear someone else say it.
Yeah, sure.
And I say it to bring up, it was such a, not seamless, that's overstating it, but it was an easier transition for us as a firm compared to a lot of other firms and lawyers I've spoken to, because we were already taking depositions by Zoom before COVID ever happened.
Wow.
Maybe just 2 months before, I guess it would have been early 2020, late 2019, I deposed an expert witness that was out in San Diego. The defendant didn't want to pay for them to come to town for us to depose them. We, naturally didn't want to spend our clients' money to go out there to depose them. So we got set up on Zoom. So it was like, once we did that, we just kind of did it regularly. And that's been great. And I use that as an example for telling other lawyers, and especially young lawyers, how important it is to be somewhat technologically advanced and be able to adapt, because you never know what's going to happen. And I think the great trial lawyers understand that you have to be able to present in multiple types of media. Yeah. And so Zoom is just another weapon in our arsenal to get cases moving forward. And I think in your question, Daniel, you asked about that very thing, and making that transition and just kind of keeping the foot on the gas as the whole world seemed to come to a stop and courts closed and people stopped working. I mean, there were cases where we couldn't get anything done because no one would return emails or answer calls.
Sure.
But we never allowed COVID or the restrictions or limitations. We never allowed us to be the ones that was. We never wanted to be the reason the case was slowing down.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Since you have been sort of on the forefront of using Zoom for depositions and those types of things, what have you learned, or what advice would you have for lawyers who are still kind of figuring it out and learning how to be most effective utilizing and communicating through Zoom? Anything that comes to mind?
I am guilty of speaking too fast. I grew up in a family that talked loud and quickly, and if you weren't loud, you didn't get a word in. I have to focus even more in a Zoom deposition about slowing my pace and controlling my cadence. As we've all experienced, you can talk over each other unintentionally with even just the slightest delay. But I think preparation-wise, in terms of thinking through exhibits, for example, how do I want to present exhibits to the witness in this deposition? There are times, Daniel, where I've sent everything to the opposing counsel, 24, 48 hours in advance and said, here's everything. Please have a hard copy printed for the witness in front of them. Because it may be more that I want them to be holding it, depending on who it is. The other times, I may want to share my screen and literally be able to adapt a document while they're looking at it.
Yep.
That's been a really cool effect, cool tool to be able to use. And you kind of gain the respect quickly, right? And they're seeing you gain their respect through your preparation. Yeah. And they see you are taking this seriously and that you've come ready and you're prepared. And so I've seen witnesses, whether they're what you'd consider legally or business sophisticated versus not, both react the same way, that it's like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. I see what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard, obviously there can be some strategic decisions as to why or why not you might send stuff ahead and that kind of thing. But to the point of sharing the screen and keeping the exhibits and just showing them as you're going through the examination on screen, I think a couple of folks have mentioned, just the kind of the efficiency of everyone knows what we're talking about. Like, you don't have the witness over on the other side of the country through the Zoom lens trying to which one is it and this where and all that. Like, if you've got it on screen, you can pull, it's the only thing there on screen, and you can kind of point right at what you're talking about or highlight what you're talking about. And you kind of cut through all of the either delay or the like, oh, what? I don't have it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that come up for you? Have you seen that?
Yeah. Did you, counsel, did you bring a copy for me and my paralegal and our associate? Do you have copies for everyone? It's like, no, I
don't. So yeah, it's interesting. And I imagine, kind of like everyone, we're in the mode of, as we transition to kind of post-COVID world, once it's gone, that, we'll continue to utilize these tools, maybe not to the extent we have over the past 14 months, but moving forward, they're going to be part of our lives, I think, in a lot of ways, both in law practice and in just living. And so being used to this is going to be important.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a tool that we use regularly and hopefully doesn't take the place of going down to the courthouse. Right. That's the fun part of the job. And certainly there are certain judges and courts and particular matters that are handled by a telephonic conference. COVID or no COVID. And I imagine judges will continue to utilize Zoom in kind of the same way. I don't think it's going to be the go-to. I hope it's not the go-to for depositions or mediations anymore, but I think it will be, it certainly helps with scheduling difficulties, Daniel, we had probably fall of last year, we had a, interesting case. We had a client that was hit by a pool umbrella at their subdivision's public pool area. Big gust of wind came up, took the umbrella right out of the table, and just came right down on our client. She was really, really hurt. And we had 4 different defendants. So we had 4 different sets of defense counsel, and we have 4 different decision makers come in with money. And the thought of trying to get all of those people aligned to meet in person for a mediation, it just gives me heartburn, especially when a lot of the decision makers are coming from all over the country. They might not be Houston based. We ended up having a 14 participant mediation by Zoom and got it done in one day. Yeah. Yeah. And no one had to travel. And so I think that will continue to exist. Maybe not to go to immediately, but if you're having scheduling difficulties because someone goes, well, I lose a day on the front end and the back end for travel, so it's a 3-day ordeal, not a 1-day. Say, okay, well, maybe Zoom.
Yeah, yeah. Do you also expect do you enjoy or appreciate using Zoom for kind of the non-dispositive hearings, kind of a formal formality type hearings and things in front of the judge as opposed to getting down to the courthouse? Or what do you kind of see going forward on those?
Yeah, on smaller, kind of less dispositive issues, I do think it's beneficial. In a bigger city, if you're in Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and you're trying to get downtown, everyone always talks about parking, and you might have a 5-minute hearing, but it's taken you an hour since you left your office and at least 30 to 45 to get back. And so for everybody's sake, and especially when I'm not billing my time to get to the courthouse and do all that, we're all about efficiency, right? I want to get through the work, do it well and do it right, but do it as quickly and efficiently as I can. So that doesn't bother me, the thought of continuing to use Zoom for those less significant hearings.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be really interesting to see how we move forward. But so switching gears a little bit, I want to take you back to the first couple of years that you were in practice. What's something that you learned in those years that have stuck with you and that continue to be an important part of how you practice today?
It's really probably not related to the legal industry, but those who were fortunate enough to have Professor Gwynn at Baylor will hopefully remember this too, but he always said over and over again that once you graduate law school, no matter what city you go to, you have a responsibility, you have an obligation to serve your community. And that by default, being a lawyer in your community, people will look to you to lead and to serve and to be on the school board or whatever it might be. So when I moved to Houston after being at Baylor, there was a former partner at my first law firm that had recently retired, and he was basically like full-time volunteering. And, I took to heart what Professor Gwynn had said and went to the partner and said, what can I do? Give me some options. What are some good organizations to get involved with? I want to start now because I'm afraid if I don't start now, I never will. And he got me involved with an incredible organization in Houston called the Forge for Families. It's an after-school program that helps families in the Third Ward in Houston. They have buses that pick the kids up after school, bring them back to the campus. They provide a hot meal, character development, physical activity, tutoring, Bible study, just kind of lots of different growth things. And they had a weekly tutoring organization. So I started doing that, and I'd leave work at about 4:45, 5 o'clock once a week, head over there, spend an hour with an elementary age student, usually the same student every week, and give my time that way. And that grew, Daniel, into other opportunities. Leadership in Houston Young Lawyers took note of what I was doing, asked me to be on the board to help create opportunities for other young lawyers to volunteer and find opportunities. That's what I learned early on, and it's something I stress so much to young lawyers that you have to find a way to give back. You have to do it, and you have to do it early, because if you wait too long in your career, you will fill your time with other things, especially work and family and spiritual obligations, working out, trying to stay somewhat healthy. Yeah. But there's no question, Daniel, that this is an industry that suffers from substance abuse and depression. And to me, volunteering and doing it regularly has been one of the best and just most healthy outlets to relieve that stress. And I like to put it as, you diversify your investments. You got to diversify your time, because not every day at work is going to be great. You're going to have bad days. You have no control over it. So if all you've got and your entire self-worth is based on your work, and you have a bad day at work, well, guess what? You have a bad day.
Yeah.
But you have a bad day at work and you go work, or you go volunteer, you go help someone who's in need, you turn it around immediately. It gives you perspective and really helps you kind of come down, reset, and come back in the next day.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up. I don't know. We've talked on this show in the past about getting involved and volunteering in one sense, and some of that to do with networking, business development, and obviously alongside the good work that people do. But the point about getting started, as soon as possible, and that's what you did, and you made that a priority, I think is really, really good. And people need to hear that, because you're absolutely right. I think it's not that, hey, if someone's listening and they've been practicing for 10 years, never volunteered a day in their life, it's not too late. Like, start now. Like, that's not what we're saying. But no question, it's just so much easier to start from the beginning, while you're kind of getting a routine and a habit, and this is the way you're going to work every single day, every single week, every single month, moving forward, like to just bake into that cake the time to volunteer, and it just becomes routine. It becomes habit. You do it just like you do the other things that you do, and I think that's absolutely right. I talk about that with folks too when it comes to being generous with your resources, your money, and people talk all the time about, I'll start giving to this charity or that church or this or that whenever I start having some, and the answer is no, you will not. You just won't. Like, it just becomes, it's the same thing with your time, and so I think that's so good to bring that up in this context, and I hope people will take that to heart. If you're out there and you're volunteering right now, good for you. Keep it up. Recruit your friends to get involved as well. But if you're not, don't feel guilted into it, but just think about it and think about ways that you can plug in, because there are so many opportunities and so many needs right around you in your little circle and your community that need you. So I think that's great. And you mentioned you went to the retiring partner to ask about where to get involved. Would anything else that you would suggest, or just ways to, because I think sometimes people are a little intimidated about, where to start and where to kind of get plugged in. I think you had a route to do that, and I think your personality lends itself to kind of going after what you're going to do. So, but for people that maybe a little more reserved and a little more gun shy about where to kind of step in, any advice or suggestions?
I'd say definitely go to your local Young Lawyers Association. If your city doesn't have one, go to the local bar association or an end of court or local law school. Those are great connections for finding opportunities to serve. And Daniel, exactly what you said about it, people not knowing how to take the first step or where to go. That has become my role on the board of Houston Young Lawyers Foundation, is to create and find opportunities for young lawyers to volunteer. So because I know there's so many that want to, and they just don't know what to do or how to go about it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
My goal is, hey, here's a turnkey event or program. You literally just have to show up. Just do it. Whether it's a partner, we've partnered with Big Brothers Big Sisters on events and things like that. It's just exposure. And I will unashamedly admit that I do it just as much for my benefit as I do for those that we are volunteering with, because of the mental health aspects of it and the good that it does for my life and my practice. And our lawyers here, especially the partners, understand that contributes to my overall productivity, right? And my well-being. And when I've gotten a little more brazen about it as I've gotten a little older, but when young lawyers say, well, I don't know if my boss will let me leave a little early to go volunteer, I'll say, well, is that really somewhere you want to work then?
Yeah.
Right. And I usually kind of like chuckle. I'm like, no, well, seriously. I mean, you talked about you love your job and you respect your bosses, but you're afraid to go ask, hey, can I go give an hour of my time to serve our community? And usually lawyers will go, you're totally right. I will go ask. Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's good. What have you noticed or seen in associates, young lawyers, that impresses you or that stands out to you? Something that maybe when you see it, you're encouraging them, or you're just taking mental note. Hey, that associate's kind of on the right path. What can associates do to stand out?
Taking initiative, not waiting for instruction. Not being afraid to fall on their face, which comes with confidence, right? And confidence, by no means do I mean being cocky or irresponsible, but being able to take over a situation or insert yourself in a situation and move the case along or move a project along. Asking questions. I tell every law clerk that we have, don't ever spend more than 10 minutes at your desk wondering what it is you should be doing, or if you get stuck on something, try to work it out on your own. But if you can't, coming back to efficiency, walk over to my office, come talk to me, and let me see if I can help get you back on track. But don't waste your time going, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And I do think that's something that is helpful for these lawyers to hear, because I think sometimes, and obviously different partners may have different personalities and different approaches on some things like this, but like that, that the best route is always to just sit there and show that you can do it on your own, right? To try to demonstrate that if I put enough time and mental energy into this, I can figure this out. Meanwhile, that may not be the most efficient use of that time.
Right.
Kind of thing. Like you're saying, like, don't sit for more than 10 minutes. Come and talk to me if you can't get there. And we can try to get you on the right track. Yeah, that kind of thing. And so some of that, I think, does come into associates have to observe the firm culture, the partners individually, to see how they like to have their associates working and where do they want them spending their time, because some of it's not necessarily just intuitive, and it's not necessarily always consistent with each firm or with each partner within a single firm. Don't you think?
Yeah, it's very firm culture dependent, and it's not going to be the same everywhere. We have I love the culture here. Everyone works together as a team, and it's the same thing with me and our partners, Don Kidd and Jim Perdue. That I also don't spend more than 10 minutes at my desk if I'm just completely clueless. Hey, we're big on bringing answers, not questions, or bringing solutions, not problems, but not to your detriment, right? Get up and come talk about it. We are a team. It is a team effort.
Yeah. When you all are looking at hiring attorneys and going through a process of maybe looking at resumes or conducting interviews, talking to folks, what are one or two things that stand out to you that indicate that someone might be a good candidate or a good fit with you all? What are some things that on the flip side of that may be sort of red flags or disqualifying or at least raise questions?
First thing I look for is cleanliness and organization in their resume, right? If you can't get a one-page resume to look nice and organized and be error-free, that's a red flag.
Yeah. So cleanliness to the resume, not necessarily cleanliness to the physical. I guess we want that too, but
I mean, you still
you were talking about the resume.
Correct, talking about the resume. And because if it's a memo to me from a law clerk or an associate, I don't really mind a typo, because it's all about who your audience is, right? Yes. That doesn't bother me. But when you're applying for a job, your audience is someone you're asking to hire you. And so it does need to be perfect. So that's a big thing. I would look at that before I would look at GPA. I'm going to look at experience. If you were the middle of your class, but you've taken the initiative to go get experience, whether it's a free clerkship or internship, but to get in and get the time and to be around it, that's, to me, that weighs just as much as what your GPA is. Because I've met a lot of really, really, really high scoring, very smart lawyers, right, that don't have the other things that may be required to be successful, at least in what we do. Yeah, no,
that makes sense. When you get a chance to spend time with candidates within an interview setting, what do you see candidates do, either maybe in preparation or lack thereof, or in the way that they present themselves in an interview that it would be helpful to share people to maybe take back as thinking through, okay, next time I go interview, I'm going to think about that.
Look at what the firm does and look at what they've done recently.
Yeah.
Look at their social media. Did they just get a big verdict? Did they just get a big, reversal in the Supreme Court? What are they doing? What do they do outside of lawyer work? Obviously, with what we've talked about, I'm big on what you do outside of the office. So look at how they're involved. Are they involved in the local bar association, Habitat for Humanity? Take an interest, because that's all part of the firm culture, right, Daniel? I mean, so yeah, why do you want to come work here? And that's, well, I want to get some personal injury experience. Well, okay. but why do you want to work here?
Mm-hmm.
So I think being prepared to answer that question is always helpful.
Yeah, it's funny. That's probably one of the things that I think candidates struggle with the most, or maybe struggle is not the right word, but don't think about enough, is they generalize those answers, and those answers could be applicable to any personal injury firm or any personal injury firm in Houston, and especially among firms, and most personal injury firms tend to be smaller, but for sure in smaller and boutique firms where there's a culture, everybody knows everybody works together, and it has a camaraderie. I think it's important that candidates know, you need to figure out why you want to work with those specific people doing exactly
those lawyers
what they do, and that you couldn't just take the same answer and walk upstairs 3 floors to the other firm that does the same thing and apply it there. It can't work that way. Some things cross over, but then at the end of the day, some of it is unique to that firm. And I think that sometimes, candidates don't think about that.
Another thing I ask every candidate, and I always have, is what do you want to get out of this? Especially with a summer law clerk. And I always ask you because I never get a great answer. But because it's one they don't think about, and they know what they want. It's almost like difficulty articulating what it is they want. Mm-hmm. And I'm always very honest about, here's what you're not going to get, right? We show up, we work hard. Yes, occasionally we go have lunch together. But we're working. If you're wanting to go have 2-hour lunches with the partners and have a martini lunch, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you want to be, going to trial every week, we are a trial firm, but this might not be the right practice for you. So having someone who can say what it is they want to leave here with, or be able to contribute, that's a great thing to know, and to be honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. All right. So we're towards the end of our time here, but I do want to give you an opportunity. If there's something that we haven't talked about or I haven't asked about that you would want to share, this would be a good time. Also, while you're thinking about that, I want to mention that I will leave, I'll get from Michael and leave links to the organizations he referenced earlier when we were talking about volunteering, young lawyer stuff, things like that, where we can send people so that people have a place to start and go, particularly if they're in Houston. I want to make sure they can connect up with what you're doing there. So, but anything we haven't talked about yet?
On that note, I will add something. I've been through my connections with Houston Young Lawyers and working on some joint projects with Big Brothers Big Sisters. Been lucky enough to be on the Young Professionals Group board that's part of Big Brothers Big Sisters, and actually serving as the chair this year. And I bring that up because that is an opportunity that you don't have to be a big brother or a big sister. You don't have to give the major time commitments that people kind of think you have to do to be a big brother or big sister. It's literally just a young professionals group that you get to still support the great work that organization does, network, meet people, go to some happy hours if you enjoy that kind of thing. But that is, if you're in a city that has a Big Brothers organization, contact them, because it's, even if you just want to be involved, just be around a good organization and be around some like-minded people. That has been a great way for me to network and meet people in other industries, because you fish where the fish are, not where the fishermen are, right?
That's right. There you go.
That's a good one. Yeah. The last thing I'll say, I was very lucky to get to see Professor Jerry Powell's final practice court lecture a few weeks ago, and he said something that he gives a great end of the year lecture every year, and I was so glad to get to see it and be reminded of it. And he said that stress is good. Stress is a very powerful tool, and I'm sure I'm misquoting it, but the point is, embrace the intensity and the stress of our industry, but stress is a good thing when it's managed appropriately. So have these avenues in your life, have these outlets in your life that allow you to do that and perform your best at your job, whether it's dedication to physical fitness or volunteering, or whatever the case might be. But make sure you are keeping a fair balance. And, work-life balance kind of it's kind of like a touchy spot in our industry. But I think, only if you treat it like it has to be 50-50, right? It's not that you still have to have a balance. It's just finding the right balance.
Yeah, no, definitely. Awesome. Well, Michael, again, thanks so much for being here. Let's do our rapid fire questions to finish out. If you're ready, we'll hop into those. All right. Name the one trait or characteristic that you most want to see in an associate.
Taking initiative.
There you go. What habit has been key to your success?
Time management.
All right. Your favorite app or productivity tool?
I don't know how I would make it through the day without my calendar.
Your favorite pen? What kind of pen do you like to write with?
It is a Pilot. I'm drawing a blank. It's the V5. I've used it for years.
V5, yeah. That's been referenced before. Yeah, sure. Your favorite social distancing activity?
Golf.
Oh, nice. There you go. Lastly, your favorite legal movie?
Easy. A Few Good Men.
I can't believe we have so many plaintiffs' lawyer movies to choose from, and you go with the Few Good Men. That's great.
I know. I watch it twice a year. Second to that would probably be A Time to Kill. I think Matthew McConaughey. Anytime a criminal defense attorney is cast, it should be McConaughey.
It just should be McConaughey. Yeah,
just every time.
Pretty solid. Pretty solid.
Lincoln Lawyer,
same thing. Yeah. Awesome. Michael, thanks so much for taking time to spend with us. Your time management skills, I know, are important. And so that you dedicated some time to us, we appreciate it and wish you and your firm all the best.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it, Daniel.
All right. My thanks again to Michael Clinton for joining us on the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider doing two things for me? Would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And then would you rate and review the podcast in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen? If you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could help you in any way, please email me directly, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Also, don't forget, if you're interested in any of the opportunities that I mentioned at the top of the show, or just would like to visit about opportunities that might be out there in general, please get in touch with me. Would love to visit with you. Finally, next week being Memorial Day, we're going to be taking the week off here at the podcast as well. So enjoy that long weekend, and we'll be back with you the following Monday. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.